Okay, this is the video where we used already, and so this is the experiment. We saw this in class. You have a little rain machine. It's gonna simulate rain, and we have these 5 samples. One is number 1, bare soil. This is soil that has plants covering it year-round. They happen to be a little dead right there, but there's plants always covering it. 3, this is also obviously herbs covering it, plants. And then 4, only a few plants, a lot of bare soil, and cattle walk over it. And then number 5, obviously plants. Those are native grasses that they have walk over it. Then you can see the setup. There's a row of jars in the back, and as this rain falls, water that goes through the soil will be collected in the back, and water that does not go through the soil and runs off the sample will run off into the front jars. So I think there's a close-up. Same thing I just mentioned. See, there's a row in the back that collects infiltration through the soil of these 5 samples, and then there's a row in front that collects the runoff, the rainwater that does not go into the soil. Okay, so that's what I described. And here he starts the experiment. I believe it's about there. Is it starting? Yes, it started. It's going. So it's only just started. This jar in the front for number 1, bare soil, is starting to get runoff. And in the front of number 4, where that's soil that has it's a lot bare, a few plants, and cattle walk on it, there's a lot of runoff. And then here already in the back, the infiltration jar for the native grass, you're already getting infiltration collected in the back jar. Okay, let's move it forward. Let's see, that's, yeah, it's just showing it. And so this is after a while, 1.5 inches of rain, and pretty clearly number 1 has a lot of runoff, and it's dark from soil being washed away in the runoff. And number 4, which also has some plants but not many plants, and there's a lot of runoff, and it's dark because it has a lot of soil was washed away with the erosion. And then in the back row, the plots that the samples that came from areas with plants have a lot of infiltration. Number 2 has plants year-round, even though they're a bit dead right there. Number 3 has plants, obviously, and year-round, healthy soil infiltration. And number 5, healthy soil and infiltration. And you notice the infiltrated water is not as dark. It's more clear because it doesn't have soil washed away. And I think that covers it nicely. That's a very nice shot. And then he looks underneath. He looks underneath. What's it like? This is number 1, the bare soil, and this is number 4, the semi-bare soil. A few plants and also bare soil. This is number 2, which has plants on it year-round, and this is number 5, which has plants on it year-round. So he looks at them, turns them over, and this is number 2 sample that has plants on it year-round, and it absorbed the water like a sponge. And then he goes here, This is number 2 sample. I mean, this is number 1. That's number 1, the bare soil. And when he turns it over, it is dry. It did not absorb the soil. That was the bare soil. So that's showing you that it doesn't infiltrate on the bare soil. That's the most important one. And then this is number 5 with all the native grass in it. He turns it over, and it's full of water. It absorbed the rainwater like a sponge. A lot of infiltration. And finally, this was number 4, which has some grass, but a lot of bare soil, and also cattle walk on it. Had a lot of runoff, and number 1 had a lot of runoff. You can see that's the runoff jar and the runoff jar. And he turns it over, and it's quite dry. A little not quite as dry as number 1, the bare soil. The water got in on the side, but very, very dry. Not essentially no infiltration, and a lot of runoff, as you see from the jar. So that was that experiment. That's good. I just want to show it like that, and that's all we have for this. Signing off.